Okay, welcome to our Blab discussion on the discussion today is a business marketing look at Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Now, we're all business consultants that care a lot about our community and our country. And why don't we just do a very quick introduction? And we'll start with you, Bill Davis. Just introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Bill Davis. I'm the owner of Team Nimbus, which is a small business advisory firm. I work with small business owners and sales professionals to help them grow their business.
Excellent. Whitney Hill?
My name is Whitney Hill with a company, Bankcard Associates, and we work with companies on deploying payment technologies with them. I also own a company, Carolina Web Consultants, that does web marketing for small businesses.
Excellent. I'll go myself, Martin Brossman, a success coach and trainer with two divisions of my company. One is small and micro business success on and off the web, and the other is B2B sales professionals with a leading podcast show called Linking into Sales. So again, we'll open the topic, and Bill, I'm going to let you dig in. This is open season.
Well, from a marketing perspective, I think that the presidential primary have demonstrated a lot. And I say that because very few of the candidates are playing by quote unquote traditional rules. And as a result of them not playing by the rules, they're having some very substantial success and some gains. Probably the strongest example of that is Donald Trump, who has thrown out the rule book. But clearly in the Republican primaries is the lead candidate at this point. Bernie Sanders, who wasn't supposed to do well at all, again, I think it's fair to say has thrown away the rule book, and he's become quite a contender for the presidential nomination for the Democratic Party.
Excellent. Whitney, I'll let you chime in on that.
Yeah, I think what we're sort of witnessing here is, and I don't see it so much as being a Trump or Bernie thing as much as those are guys who have enabled, the changes and that are coming about as far as a social media news society, and that they are some of the first guys from the political end to really capitalize off of it. And that's pretty much being able to go out, see what is in the mind of your constituents, and come out and sort of bypass the regular intelligentsia and news media and get your message straight out to the people. And I think it's very similar to the times back with the Gutenberg printing press that went on back during that era.
Yeah, good point. I was also thinking of another time called the American Revolution, where we didn't play by the British rules, and there was a lot of upset around that too. But one of the things to me I see is that when we lose connection to our customer as a business, we create a void that is easy to fill. And in B2B sales, what you're waiting for is a sales professional to drop the ball. And from my perspective, both parties badly dropped the ball of being connected to their customers, connected to their values, connected to communicating the value they were projecting. And that's, to me, one of the biggest holes. And I'm going to add, especially in the Republican camp. Now, I want to self-declare I'm a registered independent. I was born and raised in D.C. That means I'm half the time mad at both parties. But I want to add one thing is I've taught from Murphy to Manio, and what I see the Trump's most interesting to me because I see it the most in the small towns where I get access to people talking about it. The Bernie as well, because I'm talking to younger people and finding out. But what I see is it's sort of like if they were a customer, they're so mad at their vendor, they'll take anybody as other than the vendor they had. And so when the vendor says, you're going to break up the party and break up our distribution, I can hear many of them going, that's exactly what we want to do. And so that's, to me, looking at from a business perspective of, from their perspective, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, they have lost connection to their customer so severely that it's almost like the person who's going to sleep with the best friend that they don't like to make a point over more of the same. And I've never seen so much anger towards their own party before in the trenches. So anyway, comments.
Yeah. I often say that the key to growing a business is to know your market and your customers better than you know your product. And I think watching the candidates this year is an example of that. I'm just going to use Donald Trump without regard to my opinion about his politics. But Donald Trump clearly speaks like he understands the upset and the frustration of American citizens and American voters, even though, by his own admission almost, he isn't as detailed in his understanding about the policies and how he will do what he will do. But a lot of his popularity is because he says what a lot of the American citizens are thinking. And they even know that some of his solutions won't work, or they have an opinion that they won't work. Let me say it that way. But that doesn't stop them from resonating towards him because he says what they are thinking. He knows their frustration. He knows how they feel, and he expresses that.
Yeah, with very little filters. But I mean, the pro and con of that. Whitney?
Well, yeah, and the way I tend to look at this thing is it's not so much of a Republican Democrat thing. There's still those two sides, philosophically, and how politics is viewed and everything. But on both sides of the aisle, if you look at this thing from a Washington and the rest of the country standpoint, the American populace at large is seeing their federal government is not representing them, and with as much power as centralized in Washington, you could basically say, look, there's a monopoly out there. Well, if you take that into the private sector, and I think a good example of this would be like the Time Warner Cable. Okay, when they're it's them, or you go to the guys that do it through the air. You pretty much, if you wanted cable TV service in Raleigh, North Carolina, you had to go through those guys for the longest time. And a certain sort of arrogance and lack of customer service and frustration been going on for, a long, long time with folks. And then some other companies come in, or internet services and streaming TV and lots of different alternatives come in, and all of a sudden you see those guys bucking up because they know that they're losing massive amounts of market share because they're no longer a monopoly, and they start listening again. And I would see social media and internet technologies for news going out. Basically not now, if you put the regular news companies in that Washington elite, the national news companies, because they're basically, working with their guys there, and they're part of the monopoly. Now, the man on the street can basically go out there and spread his views and find out what his neighbor's thinking, and that's creating a whole, for that power shift of information is moving out of Washington now, is becoming the town square again.
Yes, I agree. And it looks like we have someone who would like to join us here. Just stand by a second. I want to add a point. And to me, one of the things is you're right. We don't live in a world where you can market through reality like you used to. You know, if you think you have the ground game and you don't have the social game, and you're trying to keep spinning things and it doesn't match. Oh, we just lost our person. Then what happens is you lose something. And I've watched statewide. Of course, the Obama campaign clearly owned the social media market and cleaned their clock, in my view, on it. And I didn't see the other side racing to get knowledgeable on it. But it also looks like there's a big gap on the Democratic side because Bernie is using the social space, speaking to these younger people of their concerns that they feel haven't been voiced in the time period. So this is to me where it's sort of harder to market through reality. You know, the old AOL, I remember. It was in many times an inferior product, but they buried you with little CDs enough that most people surrendered, put in their computer, and then, of course, hired me for PC support to fix it.
Well, can I say something to that, Martin? You know, I think it's not necessarily harder to market through reality. What it is that you have to be real. And I'm going to take Bernie Sanders as an example on this. He's a full-fledged socialist. Well, you wouldn't. I mean, typically, no one is going to market themselves that way. And even though they might be, they would not use the word socialist. But I think when you're honest and real, people, you know, social media is going to bring that out about you. I mean, you're going to be exposed, so you have to be real. And people are going to nowadays are trusting realness more than they are necessarily, you know. They're going to trust candidate. You're going to have to be real about what you're putting out there. And I think in the past, our traditional political system has been more of a show than true honesty.
Bill?
Yeah, I see. I think the object lesson for small business owners and micro business owners is that what two of the leading candidates are doing is they're just absolutely refusing to follow the rules. Really has nothing to do whether the old rules work or not. It's that they can't dominate those rules, so they don't follow those rules. As a result of that, they're finding the opportunity that's being expressed by their popularity in the polls. It's the same thing with small business owners. You know, they can follow time-tested traditional ways of promoting their business, which is already controlled by others in the marketplace, and there's so much noise. Or they can seek out breaking the rules, so to speak, developing those additional ways and other ways that are available that are not so dominated by other businesses, by larger businesses, because they work. That's the real takeaway from a business marketing perspective in watching the political candidates and what they're doing. And how does that apply, or what lessons are there for those of us in the business market? Because they're doing the very same thing. They're doing what we call disruptive marketing, and they're doing it unbelievably well. And it's an object lesson for those of us in business in terms of not only what does disruptive marketing look like in some ways, but more critically, how well it can work and the kind of results that it can produce.
Bill, would you take a moment and give your definition of disruptive marketing? Because it's one of those words that's name dropped a lot. I want to just make sure it's clear to others.
Yeah, so let me speak clearly, just as you've asked. So, you know, we think in terms of promoting our business traditionally. We think of traditional forms of advertising. We think of radio, TV as an example. Okay. And then you both have mentioned social media on a number of occasions, or even email marketing. Those are ways of being disruptive, approaching and reaching your customers and clients in ways that other competitors don't or won't. So that's what I mean by being disruptive. And even further, offering something or offering in a unique way, making your presence in the marketplace, creating a presence in the marketplace in a way that other businesses and business owners would not, such that it gives you access to your customers that they don't have. And again, going back to something I said earlier, doing it in a way that has your market know that you hear them, know that you understand them, and know that you are of them.
Yeah, can I say something on that too? With disruptive marketing, what's really, these concepts that are happening are new in the sense that there's a new technology that they're being able to be pushed out through. But at the end of the day, it's social media that's just magnifying what was really an old type of marketing, and it's been around for since the caveman, and that is, referral marketing, referral, and the town hall square, and so what's really taking place here is and these marketing things have been around for a while with small business, but they're just now being really magnified and becoming disruptive to the status quo marketing because of the magnification with the new technologies that are out.
There's some interesting things also is in the political space, in contrast to the business, the concept of demonizing the enemy, that seems to be standard practice in the political space. And Bill, I can't imagine doing it in the small business. If I didn't like you, and I would publicly get on the air trying to come up with ways to take some mistake you made, amplify it, and make it act like it was something it may not have been. And that seems to be a game, of course, when you have, and I want to be fair to it, it's easy to say when you have just two players, it's a little easier to play. But when you got a bigger number on the Republican, they're going to pull out all spots. And I remember Pat Howlett says there's nothing pretty about politics, or when they say watching politics and sausage being made is something that's tough to stand.
Yeah, I agree with you. Here's what I think the big difference is in terms of demonizing. In politics, the candidates, be it 2 or 16, tend to have visibility. So people know they're there. When it comes to small businesses marketing, the people they're doing business with oftentimes don't know the rest of the competition. And so when we demonize our competitor, we're giving that competitor visibility, be it good visibility or not good or uncomplimentary visibility. So while in politics or large business marketing, demonizing may produce some desired result, the result it definitely produces in small business is it presences your competitor. And once they're presenced, your customer may begin to consider them. As opposed to if you're the only one there, they only consider you on your merits or not in comparison to any other business.
I'm sorry, but that's a brilliant insight. I love that. And then we'll get Whitney. But I want to add something on is when I say demonize, what I say is using the concept that I learned years ago in neurolinguistic programming of instilling doubt by little playing word games and repeating things to try to bring into existence the doubt. And that's what I call demonizing. And I think what a great contrast to small business, because we know who the political partners are. It's already out. So
That's
it's
right.
not like we'll find out. So that's why they're playing it. Whitney, you want to add anything on that one?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about negative, advertiser information that goes out in the political arena or in business, it's got to be based in reality, or at the very least based in a truth about that, the branding of the particular candidate or business. So, if I'm going after Time Warner's market and I'm talking about slow, ineffective, customer service and having to wait on the phone and stuff, well, that, in the past, that's been based in reality. So that's an easy argument to make. And, I can make my case about having faster service. In the political arena, I think it's the same thing. If that candidate brand that's been developed through the years, or what they are doing, it's easy to root out the truth. And if you're making accusations or assertions that aren't based on reality, or at least what the perceived reality is from that person's brand, they're going to be, I think, tend to be discounted and sort of thrown out. It's like when reviews are done on a business, and there's 10 good reviews, and then there's like a really bad review that these guys stink, their product's horrible, and everything else. People are going to look at that and say, well, I'm sort of going to throw that out because it doesn't fit in with the reality of I'm seeing with the other 9 reviews. And so that's I think that's sort of reality situation. Information, what you say about someone has to be rooted in some type of reality to get any type of traction.
Yeah, to that, I want to add the reality is the customer or the market's reality. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm going to go back to the presidential candidates. I think Donald Trump demonstrates that unbelievably well. He operates and speaks to the voters' reality, which all 3 of us on this phone know clearly is not his reality. Mm-hmm. He actually lives in a very different world.
But he doesn't pretend about what that reality is. He doesn't. He doesn't pretend about what that reality is either.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when he speaks, though, he speaks to their reality.
Yep.
To your point, but they're fine with what his is because he's tending to them, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with that.
And there's what I'd like to talk about next is, and we have a caller that's trying to come in, and I'm going to put you on hold a minute while we finish this because there's a very strange post over there. I acknowledge it. But I want to talk about what are the demographics that these 2 are reaching that the other aren't reaching, and so whoever wants to start first, and then Bernie, why don't we start with Bernie Sanders? Who is he speaking to? What is the persona of his customer that he's grabbing and the pain as a marketing perspective that Hillary is not reaching as much?
Can I start off with that one? I think who Bernie is reaching are the younger set, the millennial set that is, and that's a large demographic like the baby boomers that represents a large amount of a bulge of people that are going through the population and really sort of the next baby boomer group. And what he's reaching them on is that they've gone to college or whatever and come out and are unable to get a job, are looking at the situation with the establishment and are upset that what they perceived were the type of promises that their parents have, they aren't able to cash in on.
Yeah, good. In fact, we have a comment here that says he's grabbing teens. 90% of his votes are teens. So, Bill, we'll let you what is the persona that he's gotten in? And
Yeah,
yeah,
my sense is that Sanders speaks to those individuals that don't feel like they are in quote unquote the system and don't have much of an opportunity to get into the system and benefit from, I'm going to say, the American dream. I think that their perception is literally there's no way in. I think Trump speaks to those that have had a piece of the American dream and either have lost it or feel like they are losing it, and that they don't want to do that for whatever reason. They feel like they've earned it, or they feel like they're entitled to it. But they've at least had an experience that they've had a taste of it, and they want it back. So that's the way I would describe the personas of the people that are embracing Trump, and the persona of the people that are embracing Bernie Sanders. Now, from a marketing perspective, the key thing is that those two candidates really speak to what they understand the persona of their markets are. They don't do a whole lot of playing around on the margins. I think it's also fair to say they're not real concerned with being quote unquote politically correct. They are concerned about hitting the mark with the markets that they are addressing, and they are doing it unbelievably well.
well,
Yeah,
go ahead, Whitney.
if I could jump in there on what Bill said, I think it's a really good point about the fact that they're not going after the margins, and I don't know if the margins are really that big. That's why they're being successful. I think previous politics was all about, okay, taking the base for granted and where were you going to win the election was in the middle. And I think those days are changing.
That's the lesson us business owners ought to learn in our marketing efforts. The margins ain't that big. Let's not spend too much time going after them.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's really true.
That's such a good point, because I mean, look at what J.C. Penney's did, where they went for this new audience and completely forgot the old audience, and it just about put them under. I remember my wife. We're in the over 50 crowd, and she went into Penny's one day, and she looked up and went, "Where's my pennies?" And I was so affected by her being heartbroken by it. I wanted to fight somebody because they hurt my wife. And my joke is the majority of they lost the base that was feeding them, going for something new. And that seems to be a parallel we're seeing in both political parties. They've lost the base that feeds them, going for the extremities, assuming they had it. I think that's a great point, Whitney and Bill, you've brought up in this case. I want to bring up another one is again, the younger people I'm seeing that have 2 or 4 year degrees, and the tremendous struggle they're having to get employment today. I'm teaching in the social media class to treat your education as icing on the cake, that you need to be marketing yourself more than ever. And I think that he's speaking to that audience well. Now, to me,
can I say something on education? I think one of the big things that with the millennials is that our extended education system needs an overhaul. It hasn't been market responsive. Now it is in the technical areas, maybe with engineering and that type of thing. But when it comes to the liberal arts, lots of curriculums are offered today that really have no career path associated with them, or at least are not representative of what's out there. It's sort of one of the problems of our system. So people come through, get a 4-year degree, get all take on a lot
Debt.
of college loan debt, and then come out and like, oh gosh, I'm working over here at the restaurant waiting tables. And I think that's one of the dangers that comes in when there is with our educational system, it's somewhat of a monopoly, and that, most colleges that the masses are going to are state schools, and pretty much there's a lot of control by the government as to what's going to be taught and what's going to go in, for not unilaterally, but within the system itself. They're not really looking at, they've got a monopoly on the situation, and they're not really going out and looking to see what really needs to be taught to get people into careers that they can go out and make money.
And I also want to defend, because I'm hearing more schools teaching LinkedIn to their people, and others, some are working on it and getting going. I want to add something else about the Donald Trump group, because I've seen so many in the field of walking across North Carolina and both. There seems to be a very large number of Americans who, like Bill said, believe or want the American dream to occur for them. Life has not improved for them since, I think, Whitney, you said almost back to 2001, and definitely not so much for 2008. They are working one or two jobs, and they are, and I want to acknowledge many of them are Caucasian. They feel blamed for everything with the least opportunities, and no one seems to be speaking to them. And growing up in Washington and being very seeing what happens when a city explodes. When I was downtown when King was shot, and he was my hero. I think that is a very serious issue we need to be addressing, because in society, when a working middle class gets squeezed enough, you get unpredictable results. And that's what happened in the time of Martin Luther of the Lutheran Church and many others. And so I think that's something where I almost think for the Republican side, they need to get on the media and go, we failed you, we failed you, we failed you. We have lost all track to our audience, and we need to start listening again instead of, but that's one strategy.
I don't think, Martin, you're going to see that happen because you don't give up power.
Yeah.
I mean, power gets taken away from you, and you don't just look at the politicians, but the whole system that's backing the politicians on both sides, and they're not. Both parties need each other, and they're backed by their constituents. And when I say constituents, those constituents can be backing both parties. They're not going to let go of the reins of power, because changing the system essentially takes away the monopoly. And so hopefully that's a peaceful revolution that occurs where the people step in and change things. And this gets into one of the downsides, I think, of social media. It can turn into a lynch mob. You can get people will do things in groups that they wouldn't do as individuals. And that's where you have the lynch mob, mentality that forms and stuff. And that's something that I think hopefully responsible individuals rise out of the movement, and they take responsibility for, effective messaging to their constituents to keep that type of thing from happening.
Bill, let's let you comment, and then let's go ahead and answer the question that showed up.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say. We've got a question here, and I want to take a cut at it as an American and then as a business consultant and coach. The question is, who will make America great again, Bernie or Donald Trump? And frankly, who will make America great again are the American people. And I say that because it's the same thing again with small business owners and sales professionals. Their fate in the marketplace has nothing to do with the big businesses. There is plenty of market. The big businesses do what they do. Whether or not small business owners and sales professionals are successful is a function of what they do. And America's no exception. The American citizens will make America great, have made America great, and are the only ones that have ever made America great.
I just want to add on to that. I've seen that so much across this state. A small town named Franklin, North Carolina. I think it's Franklin and near us. Very nice place. I saw a coffee shop go under that I went to, and they put massive efforts in trying to get funding from the government for a park that I've now stopped by and seems to be mostly weeds. It's like the leaders, when the people lead, the leaders will follow. And I think that's a core thing. There's another comment here is one audience is looking for American great and another audience is looking for something different. Because if you don't think the American dream is an option at all, then you're just looking for opportunity, and the word American great may not have the same word. And this comes back to your point, Bill. And then, so I want you to add that, because not everyone's looking for American great. They're looking for opportunities, and some have already given up. They aren't even on the race.
That's right.
Well, I mean, I'd like to hear a little more clarification on what that means. American greatness may be defined by different political entities a little differently and stuff. But if I go to a ball game, let's say, okay, there are certain shared values in that ballpark that, with a cross section of American people, and if you polled it, probably the typical split of political parties would be there and that type of thing. But there would be certain shared values that all of us would agree upon. And I don't think that most people in there would think that a weak America is a good thing. I recognize that there's political elements in our country that, want to see that type of thing. But I think by and large, there are certain values that American people share that are principled, that generally can be agreed upon. Outside of that, there are a lot of issues that are different, but a lot of those issues should be developed on a local level. And how I want to live here in Raleigh, North Carolina, may be pretty much agreed upon by rank and file in this city, and we can get the differences worked out. But that may not match up with how people want to live over in Northern California. And that just says to me that a lot of the issues, rather than being dealt with up on a national level, that are being dealt with now need to move down to a local level, where it's easier for me to talk across the table, here locally, and get things worked out and even agree to disagree on certain things, than it is up on a national level where we're deciding a lot of things should be done locally.
Bill, you want to add something on that?
Well, I'm gonna continue to speak from the marketing consultant point of view. The great opportunity for small businesses is that they do have the ability to drive local determination, to be unique and competitive on the local level. I won't say they're completely unencumbered by governmental regulations, etc. But from a business perspective, a small business perspective, we have a much greater opportunity to accomplish for business what Whitney is speaking of than maybe we do in the overall framework with the governmental and political system we have.
Yeah, I think he hit right on there, Bill, with business. That is, for the small business guy, what the advantage is, that he's here, him. He can cater to the particular things of his local market that are truly unique that McDonald's can't cater to.
That's right.
Well, to quote Bill from your own Team Nimbus training I got to help out with, speed of execution I learned, right? And
Yep.
what was the other one, Bill? I don't know if, one of them.
Well, there are a number of them. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I don't know
Okay,
which of the other ones you're referring to.
But one of the big things that a small business has, this might be a merge of yours and mine. So let me continue. Speed of execution, understanding the local market, and bringing the people out front. So that might be a hybrid of mine and yours. That's what.
Can I make another comment on local markets? Yeah. Local markets aren't necessarily geographically local. Mm-hmm. They could be spread across the whole world. I mean, and what I'm talking about there are communities that are based around a particular, shared interest or value. And those, with the internet, like we're having a meeting here, you can, with social media, you can have, you have entire communities around a particular value or interest that span the globe, So that can be considered the same thing as a local community.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've hit on a number of things. I think we ought to open up, see if other people have some comments or questions. And this was the conversation I wanted to have with you, and I learned something from each of you and the perspective of it. So why don't we open up if anyone has a comment or question to explore, or we can open up the seat if someone wants to add it, and take a few minutes for that. The election certainly is more entertaining to watch than ever before. I have it sometimes thought I was switched to the Onion instead of a political debate. But and I do I'm still old school where I going, if I had a child that acted that way, they'd be in timeout. But I guess I've got to accept I am old school, and I kind of want leaders to behave the way I would want my child to behave when they were mature. And that's overly ambitious.
Martin, if you go back and look at old, politics back in the early days of the country, I think, you could probably see a lot of what, politics are today.
Yeah.
That the social media and community has brought back some of the bad stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. Bill, you think add to it?
Well, I got to tell you, I don't know. While I find it distasteful, I don't know that it's bad. If it's reflective of how American citizens think and feel, it's reflective of how American citizens think or feel. And I think there is some benefit in us all understanding that. The way that TV politics has been done, it is so controlled and so politically correct that we don't get a good view of a representation of how American citizens feel. So I think part of what we're experiencing is that we're confronted with the reflection that's showing up through our politicians today.
Great point. Yeah, I think you're right. Also, what's so exciting now is I say we have the major media, the two main political parties, CNN and Fox. Then we have the sub-media, which is the local and smaller media channels. And then I call the micro media, which is Blab and podcasting and others.
Right.
And it's a open game. And I know, talking to some privately, some of the broadcasters, that they would rather it go back to a controlled channel where they controlled the message, but the truth is they didn't control it then either, Bill, because their brand lived in our mind no matter what they thought.
That's right.
It's just now it's more open.
But I think it's being,
Go ahead.
I think it's amplified with social media, because when I find out that, I might have been afraid to talk to my buddy about it, and when I see him do a post on Facebook, it like, wow, he agrees with me. I think there's a certain amount of amplification that people are a lot more open about coming out with what they really believe.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Well, excellent. I think we really covered the topic. And if we don't have any other comments, I think we ought to kind of go around and give a closing statement and thank all the people that listened and was involved in it. And I'm so happy. This is what I wanted to do. So thank you for appeasing me. So we'll let you go first this and closing.
Yeah, just sort of, this is a marketing talk. I will say this, just a couple of things about the political end of this. I think that one of the big effects of this that is not going to change is the loss of power of the political parties and in Washington. There's going to be some change out, and there'll be new people up there, and we're going to be dealing with some of the same problems and that type of thing. When it comes to business, I think the big point that Bill made that I think really resonates is that when you can get is a local business, which I'm a small business guy, and all of us are. It's your ability to be able to outmaneuver the competition and really create a communication line with the end customer that you're targeting, and you keep that. Instead of trying to go after and market like the big corporations who are going after mass appeal, your ability to be able to go in and target, really understand your specific constituent that you're going after, and keeping that market specialized and small and niche is really what is, for the small business guy, going to enable them to be successful and have stickiness in their particular market niche.
Excellent. Whitney, I'm going to throw in, how can people reach you if they want you in the business world? We're still business people, have to feed our family.
Yeah, the best way is to go look up my LinkedIn profile, Whitney Hill, and my contact information's on there. You can actually call me directly. There's with the phone number that's on my LinkedIn profile, and definitely, that would be the best place to contact me, and it's right there.
Excellent. Bill, go over to you for closing comments.
But it comes to disruptive marketing, I think that Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders have provided us a fabulous object lesson. And that is what's possible when you don't play by the rules, and they, frankly, without regard to what you think of their politics, they haven't broken any laws. They just haven't played by the rules that the political parties have set. And as a result, they're having considerable success. And I think that, again, is an object lesson for us as local and small businesses. To be real clear, are we playing by the rules? What rules are we playing by? And is there any benefit to us playing by a set of our own rules to have the same kind of benefit that they're having? So it's very interesting using politics as the backdrop for a marketing discussion, but I've found this very enjoyable. And if anybody would like to reach me, you can tweet me at Team Nimbus. Or as Whitney suggested, you can find me on LinkedIn at Bill Davis, and I'll take a call, an email, or a tweet. And I hope you all have a good afternoon.
Excellent. I'll wrap up on mine. To me, some of the wonderful takes away is that this is showing that two things. One, if you don't stay connected to your customer, you may lose them to someone you didn't expect. And two, in small business, we have to be always watching to see if the competition's made a paradigm shift to a new leap, and then how to respond to it, not assume that just doing business as usual will continue to keep us fed. And I think all three of us do our best to do that, and often help each other to watch each other's back and other good people we know in the community. And then to reach me, my business card says, Google my name, Martin Brossman. That's the little card itself there. And I'm social media and others, and glad to connect. And I love for the conversation to continue, maybe on Twitter. I don't want to wear out my Facebook friends for it, but I thank you so much, Bill. I so admire and appreciate you. Thank you so much, Whitney. You've been a good friend and advocate as well. And it's so fun to have a community of business owners that are also friends that look out for each other. And thanks to all my friends out there that are listening. And this will wrap it up.
Okay.
And
Thank you, Martin.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Martin.
Take care, everybody.